Okay, everybody. So let's get started with our afternoon webinar. It's entitled Using Builterra for Bids and Tenders e-procurement Processes. I'm Jeff Lyons, and I'm happy to be presenting this PowerPoint. It's been a few years since we've gone through the bids and tenders process, and I figured spring is coming, so we should probably review that if you are already a Builterra customer. If you're not a Builterra customer, then obviously I hope that you appreciate what you're going to see and maybe mention it to your design and construction managers to take a look at Builterra for those processes before procurement and after procurement. All right, and if you have any questions, Justin's going to monitor the chat window and we can answer questions at the end of the session. So if you have a question, you can just put it in the chat and we'll address it at the end. And with that, we should get started. Quick introduction to Builterra. This is the process in which the engineers go through, whether they're internal city engineers or the external consultants. This is the process that they move through after the design is approved. So this is really the construction contract administration part of the process that we're going to talk about. And that's what Builterra is for, essentially, is to move these items from procurement into the construction phase and ultimately payment to the contractor. So there's a lot of bullet points here. Essentially, it's a web-based mobile application that does all the work for you. The enhanced platform, specifically around project management, is really the document management, RFI, submittals. Again, more of a construction project manager tool set, and it's all web-based and included with the Builterra subscription. The mobile app is, you'll see a little sample of that today. It's a purpose-built tool that's used by the field staff using mobile devices like cell phones or tablets, where they can do data collection, specifically contract item quantities, and that is directly related to the e-procurement bid items that we're going to see here in a second. And ultimately, it feeds the progress payment system. So the mobile app is a integrated part of this whole process and important post-procurement. So just a sampling of some of the clients we already have here in Ontario. This is actually just a portion of them. We're growing each month. We're adding to these logos, and all of these customers are bids and tenders users. So I think that relationship has been good for us, and we continue to grow that with bids and tenders and their users. And of course, all of the engineers who work for those public sector clients use Builterra either as an external consultant, or in many cases, they use it for their own inspection purposes. So in this list, you might see somebody like a WSP. We're in every office across Canada because they wanted to digitize their processes in the field. Similar to, say, Crozier, which is a land development consultant, nothing to do with municipal. Again, looking to digitize the bidding process and the inspection process. We sort of coined a term called digital pathway for civil engineers. It's sort of a process which is familiar to us in the design group. And this is sort of what it looks like. So when we talk about e-procurement, we're really in the red circle here. And what it means is that the designers or whoever's putting together the bid package can easily move data from the design into the bid package and ultimately into procurement. So we're going to look at that process today, and then look at how do we move it from the bid into the inspection and progress payment cycle here. So all of this data is fully integrated, and many people touch it. So part of 10 years ago when we sort of envisioned this system, it was to go from design all the way through to your as-built GIS. And we're working on this last piece here this year. So we should have a very good breadcrumb all the way through the system, including the bids and tenders process, which you'll see. The basic workflow, I mean, there's only 3 boxes here, so it's easy to follow. These are pretty big buckets of data. But the reality is that the design group, possibly the construction contract administrators in the public organization, will create the bid using standardized processes in Builterra. They previously were using Excel, I would think, to do this. And ultimately, everything does go to Excel, but in this case, they're using an online cloud-based platform, Builterra. Moving the data into procurement, data will be cut and pasted from the state from these spreadsheets into bids and tenders. Ultimately, the bid is awarded, and then it goes to construction. So before and after bids and tenders is the Builterra workflow. So if we kind of look back to the roots of standardizing, specifically the bid, this is sort of just a look at Builterra sort of under the hood. This is an administrator's view of how you can configure a catalog. And a catalog is really a specifications system where you could have, say the city catalog. You can have multiple catalog in one system, but in this case, this master bid catalog has divisions, and then it has tables, and then tables with items. And these items are standardized with unique item codes, in some cases for cost estimating and other things like that. So these standardization means that you can sort of enforce efficiency internally or externally to your sub-consultants. So if you are a municipality and you hire an engineer to do the work, instead of relying on their spreadsheet skills, you can simply add them to your Builterra project, and they will use the standard catalog. They won't have a choice. They'll be all building from the same database. So right away, the external consultant is able to build out that standard bid item schedule unit prices. So that's imperative for these processes. So again, this is very much under the hood, and we help people set this up, by the way. It's sort of what our service group does. We help cities and consultants build these standards. It's all configurable completely. This is a good example of what we call enhancing the pay item. So it's not just item code and description in the specification system, but you can augment that with design information. So diameter, material class of pipe, average depth. So these are things that the designers can use to enhance cost estimating. So for example, a sewer pipe that's deeper, quite a bit deeper than another similar pipe would be more expensive. So Builterra has a very elaborate cost estimating system for the design group. So as they build out the schedule unit prices, the cost estimating is done in real time. And again, that's all through standardization of these items. This is sort of the last piece of the puzzle, which is standardizing how the Excel spreadsheet, or in your case, maybe the CSV files, are formatted. And so this is all configurable under the account. You have section groups, essentially, and section tables. And so this really is what we call a tender template or a bid table template. And this allows you to put this all together, and then when you have a project, you can build that standardized tender from these templated systems. So that's really the sort of configuration piece of Builterra. Again, enhance, you can add all these extra properties. This could be specific interest to, say, GIS people, where they want to start extracting information directly from the bid, possibly into your asset management system. So because we have a heavy domain expertise in civil, a lot of our products are very geospatially, conceived. So a lot of this data could be, imported into the GIS at the end of the project. Building the bid package, once, of course, all that configuration is set up, is quite straightforward for the external consultant or the internal staff at your organization. It's sort of, an online Excel system, if you really think about it. The very first thing you do when you pick a project, and I didn't really go through that live or anything, but essentially when you create a new project, you can do a whole bunch of things here. But one of them is create a new bid. Now, bid is a term used in the US. Canada, we like to call it a tender. So depending on the geographic location of your project, it will actually switch those words. That's just a little tidbit. So in the Canadian realm, you might see the word create tender. So depending on where you are. The biggest thing here is the bid template, like we just talked about. So if you're an external consultant and you're doing a project on behalf of the owner, you'll have access to the project. You'll be able to create a brand new tender using their template. In other words, you're working under the owner's system. So again, fully standardized. Once you create that brand new tender package or bid package, you get an entry here, and then it's empty here. So it's all ready to go for entry. And simply picking on the red pencil, you can start building that bid package. What you see down below are just tabs, and you can start adding PDF documents to the bid package. So when you download the entire bid package, you get the schedule unit prices, as well as all of the attached specifications and any other PDFs that are attached to that package. So this is sort of how we keep it all centralized. And of course, it comes as a zip file, which can be then given to the procurement staff. Okay. When I click that red pencil, I'm able to see all of my sections. Now these are groups, section groups with section tables. And down below is the connected catalog that we saw earlier. So standardizing this whole system means dragging and dropping is possible, building out these pay item lists. And that's really ultimately what is going to be put into bids and tenders. So if you look at these tables, that is the whole premise here, is to allow the designer to finish their work and then very quickly move that into bids and tenders. Okay. Now, if you look up top here, there are other things we can do. One of them is as you're dragging and dropping the item, the cost estimating is reviewing old data. Now, the thing about bids and tenders is they have a bid analysis export, which we'll see in a second, that feeds the system. So these prices are coming from the owner's database, essentially. And so you're not getting it from some national standard of pricing. This is coming from past historic data that you probably already have. And in most cases with bids and tenders, it's in that bid analysis spreadsheet that you might be downloading. As well as cost sharing. Cost sharing allows you to break out progress payments into different account types, etc. So you'd have a more of a split when it comes to the payment system. So these are good to know if you're using Builterra after procurement. Okay, and going to the next slide here. So once you start building this out, you'll have a engineer's estimate at the end of it using historic bids and tenders data. And so this is downloaded to a spreadsheet. You can review it. When you're happy, you can, give the package to procurement. So what does that look like? If we go to the next slide, first we have to understand maybe just the terminology here. So the concept of a section and the concept of a table is important when exporting to bids and tenders. Because depending on your organization, you might want to just, make, one big list of, 200 items. That would be just a dump of a table, or it could be everything in one table. So there's all of these different configurations. So sometimes you want to have separate CSVs for each section. So there's lots of options, which you'll see in a second. So currently, if you look up top here, there's a Excel with a dollar sign and one with not a dollar sign. So this exports to Excel the entire schedule unit prices with or without cost estimate data. So generally when you hit the X button here, you'll get a nice clean spreadsheet, and we'll look at the generic one in just a second. Yeah, so this was one of the little details that I wanted to mention. This is always sort of slips people up if they have Builterra but don't quite understand the configuration piece. Each one of these section groups, if you want them to be separate CSV, you have to essentially start a new worksheet, and that will know, okay, in Excel, obviously it'll start a new worksheet, but for the bids and tenders export, it'll just come out as a separate CSV. So just keep that in mind if you want separate CSVs for each table or each section group. Sorry. Okay, so that's on the settings here. When you pick general items, you get this sort of information. Okay, so what does it look like? So if I've taken a look at my tender, of course, all of my items are here. Everything's good to go. If I click on the download X button here, Excel, if we look here, there's a format, and this could be standard, which is generic, could be bids and tenders, CSVs. It could also be maybe a specific format that you need for your own procurement system, because Bids and Tenders Pro will allow for the flexibility of many different columns and formats. So maybe there's a format that you specifically need, and we would have to program that and add it to the format system here. So plenty of options for you, but this has to be set to your liking. As you export, so this would be, say, the summary page of a generic schedule of unit prices or schedule of values, or however you want to call it. If you're an American, that you call it a bid tab. The essence is you get the summary totals here of each section group, and then every tab represents the section group with the items underneath of it, just like that. So you also notice here item number, this is what we call enumeration. And there's like 20 different enumeration styles that you can select. Specification, this is just a spec code. If you've got an attached specification, like a written document that's attached to an item, it will appear in the schedule unit prices. And you can have multiple specs added to a single item. And that's, I don't want to turn this into a full training session, but specifications can be added to individual items. So as you drag and drop them into the bid, it's literally dragging in those spec codes for you. So lots of detail there. The quantities, of course, from the design and the unit types. The yellow field represents editable fields for the contractor. Of course, you're using bids and tenders, so not so important for you. But some of our private land development clients just use a spreadsheet as a way to gather pricing. So just an FYI. Okay, so once you export it, it's basically, that's the standard format, ready to go. If we look at the different formats for bids and tenders, depending on who we've worked with in the past, we sort of keep adding to this list, as you can see. So in the bids and tenders CSV, we'll take every single table in the contract in the tender and produce a single CSV for every table, which that's a lot of CSVs if you got a lot of individual tables. The CSV sections will take all of the tables within the section group and add it to a single CSV. So that's very common. That's kind of, you know, the one we want, right? The multi-location Excel, these are probably custom built for a specific client. So I haven't, quite honestly, I haven't tested them. So as we work with customers, we will add certain options here. And I'm sure they're very specific. The one we're going to test today is the section export, because it's the most common. And just sort of what I was talking about before about on the enumeration piece. So you can see over here, just as an FYI, these are all configurable ways to enumerate. So if I click on that, so this enumeration thing here is all controlled through these settings here. So it's all completely configurable, this system. So once you have that all set up, you can set the sections as our default for this particular tender. And when you click on the Excel button again, it creates a zip file, and the zip file downloads to your local system. And you can see general items, roadworks, and water main here as the section group. And then you'll see the equivalent CSV files here. So that's part of the zip file. If you have any attached specifications, you will get a Word document with all of those specs added to that, if there are any Word docs uploaded to attached to those items. So I pick on roadwork CSV to check out the results. You get, of course, a CSV file. So the one big thing here is Builterra ID is a unique identifier, which is absolutely imperative. So we can move that information through Builterra into bids and tenders, and then back into the Builterra system afterwards, because this code is retained through the bid analysis, which is really handy and super important when we want to move historic data through. Of course, you get all of the enumeration types here, item numbers, spec numbers, and Categories is really the table name. And quantities, of course, unit price and total are empty. So that is the CSV formatting for this particular zip file. You can now look at your bids and tenders. So the engineers will do the bid. It's standardized no matter who they hire, no matter who the owner hires. These items will always be spelt the same. You know, it's always standard. So this is the biggest thing, is to have that standard in place. Now we can move it into procurement. So that zip file can be posted for the procurement people and emailed or whatever you choose. And now we can start bids and tenders. So I couldn't get anybody from bids and tenders to join us today. So I'm going to have to sort of make my way through this presentation. You're probably better at it than I am. So I'll just sort of preface that with that statement, because we don't, have access to bids and tenders here. We just simply let you guys use it, and then we work on it on the other end. So, so this is bids and tenders. This is the pro version, and I mean, it's very similar to Builterra, where you create a new project, and of course, it's a repository for all of the information you need for that project. The concept here is to create a form, and the online pricing forms is really the destination for the CSV file data. So each one of these form names could be, in fact, a section group, section table. So it's really up to you how you want to organize these form names. And then, of course, creating that form, show you how that works. Okay, so we talked about this already, is this Builterra ID has to come with the cut and paste process. Okay. So if we look at the form building, so you can look at basically the system, and that it's important that we build in each column to match the CSV. You can leave the unit price and total out, of course. The hidden field is important for here, because you don't need the contractors to see the ID. I mean, it means nothing to them, but we do want to retain it throughout the process. So that's how you do it. Essentially, you add Builterra ID, and that will be the column used to track the item throughout the system. Okay, so from there, you are cutting and pasting the items from the CSV into the form once you get those columns set up. You'll, of course, view it online, make sure it's all correct. If you didn't hide the Builterra ID, you'll probably end up seeing it here. So this is the biggest part of the system right there, is to build out those columns to make sure they match the cut and paste formatting. Okay. So again, viewing the bid forms and checking them, that's very important. And you can see all of the tables here are probably matching the Builterra system. So once the procurement is completed, you're going to want to export to the, award it and export it to the bid analysis spreadsheet. So this is, after it's all completed and closed and possibly awarded, you'll then export. And through this process, it creates this bid analysis spreadsheet. You may already do this as part of your regular work, but this is what we can consume because it's super formatted. So the bid analysis carries with it, of course, all of the regular form data, but now it has the unit pricing from each contractor that submitted data, no matter who the winner was. And of course, it will retain the original Builterra ID, and that's how we sort of do that handshake back into Builterra. So that's why it's super critical. And so the bid analysis, we really just have a single button to upload it, and then it's in Builterra. So it's just, you don't have to hand type anything. It's already there, ready to go. So look at that in a second. So after procurement, this is a bid properties button. It's quite elaborate. I didn't want to get into the extensive details of this, but essentially there's a button and it says import bid analysis. Sorry, I didn't have a slide about it, but yeah, that's it. Once you import the bid analysis, you'll have the cost estimate that was originally done, as well as all of the bidders here. So that means now, for example, you have 3 sets of prices for the project. So for that item, so remember we talked about standardizing the items. So that means that for every time you drag and drop into a new project, say for example, some curbing here, it knows approximately what your pricing is going to be based on the contractor's data. And so of course, some are going to be high, some are going to be low. We have all kinds of ways to get around that. But the idea is to start consuming the bid analysis data and leveraging it for estimating. So that's kind of the use of the tool, especially when you're doing design. So as you're changing design, you can see how it impacts cost. That's the biggest thing. So once you can do it, we do have a compare button, similar to the bid analysis that you already get from bids and tenders. Download all bids. It's basically the same kind of spreadsheet where it shows everything lined up. This one just shows you some graphics, highs and lows. So green is good, red is bad, yellow somewhere in between. So you can go through every table and compare it right down to the individual item and get a sense of, who the best bidder is. Of course, you'll already know that from the procurement process, but this gives maybe the designers a chance to take a look at the comparisons. So once you have everything in the system, we're kind of past the procurement piece. In other words, it's now ready for design and construction. And so the engineering group sort of takes it over again in Builterra. So that's what I mean. It's not just building a bid and then putting in to the procurement team. It's now we're ready to actually do the construction contract admin. And we'll just take a real quick look at that, just because maybe you might not know what that looks like. Maybe some of you do know what, maybe you already do the payment certificates for the engineers. I don't know. So it goes, once you award it in Builterra, meaning you just tag it as awarded, it will start the inspection process. And this is our app here. You can pick, say, a daily diary as a form type. Very easy to use. You'll pick an open diary entry here. So this is just using a cell phone. And then you get location. You can add some pictures, some basic details. This is all completely configurable depending on your needs. And so once you have all of that set up under the daily report, you can start adding things. And now, just like tabs in a spreadsheet, the guys in the field can start adding, labor, equipment, comments, photos, everything they need to feed the daily reporting system, including daily quantities. So there's some photos being taken, some comments being made throughout the day, not at the end of the day, and it will create a document at the end of the day. We have lots of custom reports for production or just showing quantities at the end of the week, this kind of thing. So there's all kinds of elaborate reports that people ask for. Now, more importantly, the daily report, daily quantities table, subtable, is really, if you think about it in procurement, it really is a view into the items that you had just awarded here. So imagine this, the Builterra ID sitting in bids and tenders. It's the same item that you're about to pick here. There's no copying or, it's not no re-entry at all. It's one continuous database. So this curb and gutter variable with this spec code here, that's the same item that was put into bids and tenders. Nobody retyped that. And the total of 6464, that's the total that went into bids and tenders. All we're doing is using that to move it through the process. And of course, in the field, you can actually see how much has been built to date, depending on what somebody in the past did. So you'll move it through the process. The person in the field will pick the item. They'll type in what they see for that day. Say in this case, there's 35 linear feet, some field notes, some pictures. And if they want, they can look up some history on the item. If you have a spec code or a spec document added to the item, I don't have it here, but you'll see view spec, all on the phone. So this is what you want. You want the inspectors to be moving data through the system, putting in their quantities, and then submitting it for that daily report. What does that look like? Well, in the office, the same system we use to create the bid is used to inspect. So it's all one continuous system, one central repository, and for every project. So your engineers in the office, whether you're an owner and you've hired external consultant, you'll be able to see their inspections because you've added them as part of the team to do the inspection work. Or you have your own internal inspectors, they will be doing that work with the cell phones or even a laptop in the trailer or something. So when you pick on daily diary, these are all different inspection forms as part of this account. So there's all kinds of different types of inspections you can do. Daily diary, this is just a grid like Excel where you can sort and search. And when you pick a certain record here, it shows all of those tabs that you saw on the tables that you saw on the cell phone. They sort of appear here in like Excel as tabs. And as you pick through them, you can see the results. So any photo that's collected throughout the day is, of course, added to that record. And of course, daily quantities. This is your bids and tenders data that was imported, 2 weeks ago. So you can literally start picking data that came right in through the bid analysis spreadsheet into Builterra. Very easy process to move that information through. So of course the quantities generate a report, and the report in this case shows the daily quantities. So I'm kind of focused on this because that is the key piece here, is to not have to retype data over and over again. So all of these items from cell phone, from procurement, are in the daily report, as well as the photos. And the biggest thing is the contractors you can add this to an approval workflow. So contractors will get this daily report maybe at the end of the day, and they'll be requested to review it and approve it. And if they approve it, that means they've looked at the quantities and they've approved it. If they have a problem with the quantity, they will call you probably. So what it means is at the end of the week, you can have most of your quantity resolution done. You can produce a weekly quantity report. That's another type of report. And then you can get that approved if you need to. And by the end of the month, there's no discrepancies, and the invoice that comes from the contractor should match exactly with your inspected quantities here. So the whole process is to support prompt payment, and so you can move that information quickly to be able to pay the contractor within a week. This is just an example of map interface. So you saw data from the daily reports. Not so important for daily diaries. We don't really care about the geospatial. But we have other types of forms and data. A lot of pre-construction photos, like, for example, subsurface utility, asset management, manholes, like as-built, things of that nature. So anything can be used in this system for inspection. It's not just for construction, management. It's anything really, any data with photos. Of course, every photo that's taken is like in a your own little iCloud. It's called photo map. We call it photo map. So anybody in your organization can zoom into an area, take a look at the photos, click on the photo, find out who took it, download the report. So that's a whole separate demo. But that's a really handy tool with people who can view your data internally. Progress payments is kind of the end game, where remember we talked about bids, okay? We moved it through procurement, we went through inspection, and now we're into the progress piece. So these quantities here that you're seeing, we call them little gas gauges. These are inspected quantities that happen throughout the day, and in real time they move based on those inspections. So super easy to integrate all of these systems, bids, inspections, progress payments into one database. So when you look down below, you'll see all the progress payment certificates here for the month. If you click on this blue pencil here, you get the details of the progress payment with the number of inspections, holdbacks, releases, change orders. That's a different demo again. So the whole system here. And so the idea is that this is how your construction managers will manage these payments, payment approvals, and change orders here. So basically all of that results in the progress payment. This is a custom one that was done for City of Lyons, I believe. We have generic ones, but a lot of customers want us to customize it to meet their individual needs. They don't want to change maybe their formatting from the last 20 years. So they will ask us to custom program their progress payment Excel spreadsheet. It's always usually Excel, by the way, as an output. And then this gets put through an approval, possibly with the contractor, and then you'll get an invoice. Under the details, you'll see all of the items. Again, the Builterra ID for this, say, crusher run limestone, it matches the one that was used in bids and tenders. So it's very integrated. So it's kind of taking you through that whole digital pathway that we talked about at the very first of the session. And if you have any questions, I noticed there was some chat and Andrew was answering them. Just answer it here. Does each municipality have its own codes? Or is there a universal code? That's very good. Yes, well, generally each municipality does have its own codes, bid item codes, but there are national standards in the US for sure that you could use. British Columbia has MMCD. MMCD has standardized coding for the entire province. And so it depends on where you work, essentially. And if you don't have a code standard, then we make one up that works. And you could make one up yourself just with a syntax and immediately start producing standardized items. Now, specifications sometimes have the codes, inherent with it. So you may want to match it to the spec code. So good question. Are there any other questions in the chat window? I don't know. I think Andrew's been doing a good job of answering any questions here. Yeah,
Jeff, there was one
yep,
from Robert that Andrew was helping with, but you might be able to answer
yep.
it now. So Robert asks, is there a way to select projects to form a cost estimate in Builterra, so I don't have to import data from all projects and can use projects of similar scope to form an estimate?
Um, yeah, there is, so basically when you create a new project and a new bid, as you're dragging and dropping, it's looking to the database for cost data. And if you just starting with it and you only have a brand new project, you're not going to get much result. That's when you have to basically take, say, a year's worth of bid data, and one of two ways. You can import it with Excel. As if there's an item code system that you have, then it's no big deal. You can just match it. If you don't have an item code, then you're going to have to sort of look at the way you built the tender or the bid, and then try and make it so there's a unique identifier there. So there's some tricks there, but generally, you're going to have to add about a year's worth of data to get something out of the thing. Yeah, I don't know if that answered it or not. Yeah, and oh, for estimating, keep in mind that we use item codes and design properties, but we can also use project properties. So custom project properties are possible. So you could say, well, this job is in a certain part of the county or the region. Only compare other projects within 25 miles of this one or 25 kilometers. So there's lots of like little things like that, or project types. Quantity comparisons don't compare any other area of granular, plus or minus, 5 tons from this tonnage, things of that nature. So it's a very elaborate estimating system that you can configure. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah, and
thanks. Thanks,
you're
Jeff.
welcome.
Sorry, are you finished with that one or?
Yeah, yeah. Any other
Okay.
questions, Justin?
So we got another question from Jim, and they're just asking, um, is the inspection module linked to the PPC module?
Yes, absolutely. The inspection system. So what you saw there, everything you just saw, is part of one entire package. You can't really piecemeal the thing out. There are certain levels of subscription which limit you from doing, say, payment certificate. But if you, in other words, yes, the inspection system is fully integrated with the idea that you can pick from the bid items to generate quantities, daily reports, and then ultimately payment certificates. It's one single system. Hope that answered that okay.